My journey in photography is really a long one. I started taking photographs as an amateur in the year 1984 approximately, whenever I was in school.
Yeah.
My father, who was an architect, was a very keen amateur photographer, and he introduced me to the world of photography. In school, I participated when I was in class, I think 2 or 3, in an international children's competition organized by the Statesman newspaper. So, in one of those contests, I won the first prize, which for a shot which I took in the zoo. So this achievement kind of egged me on and really got me interested in photography. So whenever I found the time, my father would take me all over the place and guide me. All my basic knowledge of photography I picked up from my father. I studied in St. Xavier's School, and right from class 3 I was appointed as the official school photographer by the headmaster, and I remained as the official school photographer for St. Xavier's School, Kolkata, till I finished school in 1966. I used to cover all the school events like the sports, then all the class groups, annual class groups, and also various stage performances that happen from time to time. So after school, I joined St. Xavier's College and studied physics. After I finished my physics from St. Xavier's, I went to XLRI Jamshedpur, from where I completed my MBA in marketing. But even there, my interest in photography continued. And during the 2 years at the institute in Jamshedpur, I took thousands of pictures of activities in the school, the campus life, the students in their different activities, the buildings, the canteens, everything I documented. When I left the institute, in 2 years later in 1973, I left the institute with a bank of a few hundred photographs which they used for the next few years for all their brochures and prospectus. After having left the XLRI, I joined the gramophone company in Kolkata as a management trainee, and I was inducted into the marketing department. So there also my interest in photography continued. So while I was working for the gramophone company, during my free time, I picked up some freelance advertising work from different advertising agencies in Kolkata. The main ones amongst them being Ulka Advertising and Lintas Advertising. I was in touch with Mr. Dhanji Rana, who was the creative director, and he told me, Vivek, you're wasting your time working for a company like the gramophone company, because you have a lot of talent in photography from what you've done, your few advertising stints that you've done. I think you have great potential. So my suggestion is you give it up, try your hand at advertising photography, and then if you don't succeed, you always have your 6 years of work experience. So in the year 1979, I left the gramophone company and started freelancing as an advertising photographer. I was inspired on the way by my maternal uncle, Mr. Dilip Shah, who had studied photography in Cologne and started working in Kolkata when I was a school student. And in my spare time, I used to sit with him, watch him working in a studio, and that's how I got inspired into taking photographs of objects, still life, product shots. He did a lot of shoe photography or Bata. He was doing a lot of other work for many of the ITC products, many of the clients for Clarion advertising. When I was doing my freelancing, after I left my job, I happened to meet Mr. Vilas Bende in Bombay and also Mr. Mithal Bedi. When I met Mr. Bende in his studio, my vision really opened up wide. So I realized that to be really good in your work, you have to have the kind of tools that you require. And he suggested that I should go in for a large format view camera if I were to really take quality photographs for advertising. So I purchased my Sinar 4x5 camera sometime in the year 1980, and I never looked back after that. So I did my first advertising campaign in year 1974, and this is 2023. It's now almost 49 years and more of advertising photography that I've been doing. In the year 1989, I built my own studio on Kasbah. It's a fairly big studio, and where you can drive in cars and shoot cars. Because before that, when I was trying to shoot cars in the Tollingan studios, because I was shooting all the new models for Hindustan Motors, all the new cars they were launching from time to time, I found a lot of problems shooting in these film studios because they're not really designed for shooting cars. So making adaptations, and they have all their guild rules by which if you don't need so many people, you're forced to hire so many people. So I was spending money for services which I was not requiring. So I decided that I should build my own studio. So I took the plunge, built my own studio, and ever since then I'm really enjoying life. More than 49 years doing what I love doing. I just mentioned that Mr. Vilas Bende, who was an advertising photographer in Bombay, he was a great inspiration, but he was doing mostly studio-based work, models and products. Another great influence was Mr. Mithal Bedi, who was that time the only leading photographer who was shooting industrial work. That means covering factories and manufacturing processes, plants. So these two persons have really influenced me in a great way. So let me decide that yes, commercial photography, especially advertising and industrial, is my line of work, and this is what I've been doing. In between, of course, advertising also covers model photography. So when you're shooting for a jewelry client, you have to shoot a lot of models also. So my line of work, I cover almost every kind of photography except event coverage, weddings. These are two of the areas which I've not worked for or found much interest in. But other than that, any kind of photography that requires quality photographs, where you've got to decide on the lighting, the composition, that's been my line of work. In the year 1985, Anand Bazar group of publications invited me to join them as a senior photographer for special projects. In the year 1986, they sent me for training to Switzerland to attend a workshop on large format photography for the company, in the company Sinar, whose camera I use, and also for another couple of workshops in the next couple of years to the broncolor lighting workshops. So these workshops are very specialized workshops where only professionals with years of practical experience are invited to participate. So both these three workshops that I attended in Switzerland really trained and honed my skills in the area of large format photography and studio strobe lighting. I really, to be very honest, I don't have any personal style because I believe there is no standard lighting for any kind of, there are principles, any kind of photography, there are only guiding principles, there are basic principles you start with. But after a certain amount of experience, you have to start experimenting, which I do all the time, even now. And I keep improving on my work, I keep experimenting. But when you're doing advertising work, there's most of the time a layout, kind of a format where you got to stick to in terms of the angle, the position of the camera, the angle of the product you're shooting, the kind of lighting required. So when an art director decides on something, I always follow his guidelines, and then if permitted, I do make my own changes and do my own lighting, trying to improve on what the guidelines have been set. So I always work as a team, part of a team. When you're doing advertising work, it's a team. There's a copywriter, there's an art director. So the three of us as a team, we keep experimenting, and then we come out with certain results, and then we pick from there and see what suits the client's requirements the best. Because ultimately it's the client, and advertising photography is nothing but a media to communicate to the potential buyer the services or the goods that we are advertising. I started my first advertising photography assignment in the year 1974, so it's now almost more than 49 years that I'm doing advertising photography. So during this period, a lot of changes has come into the style of photography. When I started out in 74, only black and white photography was required because practically no color was there. Then I saw the age of color photography coming in. I started with 120 black and white camera, the Rolleiflex. Then I moved on to a 35mm camera, which was the Leica. And then gradually over the years, I picked up a Nikon SLR film camera. And then I went through various models of the Nikon cameras. Then digital age dawned sometime around the year 1999. So I started fiddling with digital cameras, but they were very primitive, rudimentary at that time. But then I thought to myself, and I was almost sure that this is the direction where photography is heading, that over the years film is going to be sidelined and it's digital which is going to be the mainstream. So I adopted the digital way of photography very early. So around the year 1999, there were small digital cameras available, so I started experimenting with those cameras, and I realized that in future, and I could almost forecast that this was going to be the new frontier of photography, and digital photography is going to slowly overtake film photography. But there were a lot of other photographers who found that this was not really going to happen. But I carried on, and I started with small digital cameras which are not really useful in terms of quality and clarity. But then there was rapid progress happening in the development of digital cameras and digital technology, and I kept updating myself. I started with a crop frame digital SLR and started getting a little experience, and then I moved on to a full frame DSLR, and then over the years I invested in a Leaf digital bag which I was using with my Hasselblad cameras as well as my Sinar. The same digital bag would fit on both these cameras, 80 megapixel, very expensive but excellent quality. And this digital bag was producing much better result than even the 4x5 sheet film which I was exposing on my Sinar camera. So I decided that ultimately digital is the way, and the advantages are much more than film. Because when you're using film for advertising photography, you shoot the film, then you have to get it processed. After processing, it has to be scanned, and ultimately the scanned result is nothing but a digital file. The steps in between of film processing and scanning are beyond the control of the photographer, and there was nothing the photographer could do. You are at the whims and fancies of the person who was processing the film and scanning the film. I faced a lot of problems with the film processing, and I realized that if I really had to ensure quality results, I had to do my own processing. So I built quite a big dark room where I was doing my own film processing, both in all the three formats, 35, 120, as well as large format 4x5 inches. And I was doing all my prints, making all my color enlargements, making all my color prints. It was a lot of hard work because after a day's shoot, which I normally finish by 8 o'clock, by 10 o'clock I used to enter the dark room and work till about 2 in the morning, sleep between 2 to 6 in the morning, and then again back to the dark room for completing the work. So I was on average for almost 20 years sleeping only 4 hours a day, and that became an habit. So now I sleep on an average 5 hours maximum in a day. So I don't know whether doctors will feel this is the right thing to do, because you recommended at least 7 hours of sleep, but I can do with just 5 to 6 hours. So now with digital cameras, the advantage is that you bypass all these two processes. So you have done away with the lab, you have done away with somebody else scanning for you. Now a photographer has total control over his output. Earlier, photography for a photographer in the film days ended after you press the shutter button, because after that everything was beyond his control. But now, according to me, photography starts after you press the shutter button, because after the basic image is captured, you have so much control on the output, the quality, and you can get details where details are not visible easily. High dynamic range is possible. Earlier, when you're shooting interiors, you had to shoot the interior with one exposure, then shoot the exterior views through windows, which were much brighter. So the dynamic range in the case of film was hardly, for transparency material, was hardly 6 to 7 stops. Now these better cameras today is at least 15 to 16 stops of dynamic range. So the detail that I get today on a full frame digital camera is far, far better than what I used to get on the best film camera. So even today's mid-level digital camera full frame will give you much better output than the Hasselblads, which used to cost much, much more. Times have changed, they're changing, and the way to survive is to keep changing with the times, to flow with the tide. And fortunate for me, I've been able to do so. So I've still survived more than 49 years of commercial photography. For me, every challenge is exciting. So when there's a challenge, you're always trying to look for solutions. So it's when I face a very challenging kind of situation, sparks are flying inside my brain. I really get very active, very excited, and that's when I produce my best work. Sometimes I have to do very mundane work, something very simple, something very, not very challenging. I don't find much interest, but I have to do it because the client needs it, I do it. But anything that's very challenging, I find more excitement in that, and I try to get the best out of possible, because every shoot is a challenge which has to be overcome, and my objective is to bring the best out of that challenge. And I can definitely say that I succeed almost all the time. Well, thanks to the internet, you can see any photographer's work anywhere in the world. So many of them inspire me. I get a lot of new ideas. And regarding techniques and regarding equipment, you don't have to visit exhibitions. Earlier, before the internet was available so easily, I used to visit the Photokina Fair, Cologne, every 2 years, and that was the biggest photography fair. People from all over the world used to be there. I've attended at least 10 of these exhibitions, and a lot of workshops. It used to be almost a 7-day fair where not only did you get to see all the latest hardware, cameras and lenses, see them, feel them for yourself, take some sample test shots and see the results. But also a lot of small workshops used to be conducted where, as a participant in the fair, you could just go and enroll yourself and attend the workshop, see a lot of famous, experienced photographers working there and pick up ideas. But now, thanks to the internet, all these kind of activities you can get to see on YouTube. So because of this, the Photokina Fair has finally been closed for, I think, the last 4-5 years, because there's no point in spending all that kind of money and traveling all distances from various parts of the world, going to Germany to attend this kind of fair. So if you're really interested in photography, there's so much of knowledge and information available that you can pick up whatever you need. There are hundreds and thousands of videos, hundreds and thousands of blogs where you can learn. There's no end to the learning, and thanks to the internet and the availability of all kinds of tutorials, you can learn a lot. But sometimes you have to be careful, because I found that there are what we might call situations where the blind are leading the blind. So many of these YouTube tutorials are not really true or correct, and many of these tutorials are financed by various manufacturers of camera equipment to push their equipment. So, and also many of these people who produce excellent videos are not really practicing photographers, because sometimes what they say, I find that they are far from reality. So you have to be careful about what you learn from the videos that you find online. I think the most complicated and the most difficult still life shoot that I did was many years ago, was for the launch of Citizen watches in India. The agency was R.K. Swamy, based in Chennai, and they decided that I should do their photography. So they flew down their art director, the client servicing person, and their products, and we did some excellent shoots on 4x5 film, transparency reversal film. They're very, very challenging, and I can talk on hours on those shoots, but that is according to me the most interesting work in still life photography that I've done so far.